The keys predict that Kamala Harris will be the next president of the United States, and Donald Trump will fail in his bid to regain the White House.
Professor Allan Lichtman is the Distinguished Professor of History in American University, author of The Keys to the White House, and has correctly predicted the winner of each presidential race since 1984 using his 13 keys system. I'm going to let him explain a little bit more. I'm delighted to be joined by Professor Lichtman now. Professor, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Can we start, before we get your prediction, which everybody is keenly waiting to hear, can you just describe your system for us? You call it the 13 keys. What are the 13 keys?
Yes, my system doesn't pay any attention to the pundits who have no scientific basis for their opinions. It ignores the polls, which are snapshots, not predictors. The 13 keys tap into the structure of how American presidential elections really work as votes up or down on the strength and performance of the White House party. So they look at things like midterm elections, incumbency, internal party contests, third parties, policy change, social unrest, scandal, foreign/military failures and successes, and only two keys have anything to do with the candidates, and they're very high threshold keys. They ask whether the incumbent party candidate is one of those once-in-a-generation, broadly inspirational, transformational candidates, and they ask whether the challenging party candidate does not fulfill that, because all the keys are phrased so an answer of true favors the re-election of the White House party, and if 6 or more keys are false, they are predicted losers, otherwise they are predicted winners.
Are the keys centered on economic issues as well? I mean, a big predictor sometimes can be people look at their lives today or the day they're about to vote and think, am I better off than I was last time I voted? Do things like that play a key part in your system?
Of my 13 keys, 2 of them pertain to the economy, and they don't deal with ephemeral polls or public sentiment. And remember, these keys have been right for 40 years, and they're very quantitative. The short-term economic key says the economy is not in recession during the election year, and the National Bureau of Economic Research examines all kinds of statistics to inform us about that. The long-term economy key asks whether the growth per capita, real GDP, during the term equals or exceeds the average of the previous 2 terms, purely statistical.
I know we're keeping people waiting for your prediction, but I'm thinking we're going to keep them just a little more because I want to find out whether your keys take into account things like, for example, the polarization that we see in politics. Certainly, politics has changed than 40 years ago when you started getting putting these keys into practice and correctly predicting the presidential elections. Do the keys account for, or are they not affected by, the polarization you see in American politics?
You know, my favorite comedian is the late, great Gilda Radner, whose character Rosanna Dano once said, there's always something. There's always something unique about every election. In 2008, I was told, oh my gosh, we have an African-American running. Never had that. Ready for that. Then we had a woman running. Then we had social media. I have 2 answers. One, you can't change a model on the fly. That's a recipe for disasters. 2, although I've been predicting, since I predicted Ronald Reagan's reelection in April 1982, developmentally, the keys go all the way back to the election of another Republican, Abraham Lincoln, in 1860 when women didn't vote. African Americans were enslaved. We had no radio, no television, no automobiles, no planes, or an agricultural economy. So the keys have survived much greater changes in our politics, our society, our demography, and our economics than anything that's happened recently. That's why they are the unchanging North Star of prediction.
Okay, well, I think I'm going to get into trouble if we keep your prediction back for any longer. So, Professor Lichtman, who do your 13 keys predict to take the White House on November 5th?
My 13 keys predict we are going to have an unprecedented president. We are going to have our first woman president and our first president of African and East Indian descent. In other words, the keys predict that Kamala Harris will be the next president of the United States, and Donald Trump will fail in his bid to regain the White House.
And how many of your keys did Kamala Harris win, so to speak?
Well, it works the other way. How many did she lose? Remember,
Sure.
it takes 6 or more to count her out. I have her down 4 keys, a 2-key cushion. Now, a couple of my keys are relate to foreign and military policy. 2 wars are raging. They're fluid. I did give Biden a success for being the critical person in putting together the coalition of the West that stopped Putin from conquering Ukraine and threatening our NATO allies. Now, that could conceivably change, very unlikely, but that would still be 5 keys down, 1 key short of predicting Harris's defeat. So even under the worst case scenario, my prediction remains the same. Could I be wrong, even though I haven't been for 40 years? Of course. I'm not Speaker Mike Johnson who claims the Almighty talks to him. My system is based on history. There could be cataclysmic, unprecedented changes that change the pattern of history. Very unlikely. But the point is, you never know until afterwards. That's why you got to stick to the tried and true system.
Looking at something that we saw not too long ago change the entire race, which was that first debate between President Biden and Donald Trump. I'm assuming that you think your key system is going to be unaffected by the upcoming debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump.
Exactly. That's why I issued my prediction advisedly before the debate, because the big message of the keys, it's governing, not campaigning, that counts. And although the Biden Trump debate did change the complexion of the Democratic ticket, the keys took that into account. But generally, campaign events, including debates, do not predict elections. And no one has ever successfully predicted a string of elections by looking at campaigns, including debates. Hillary Clinton won all the debates and still lost in 2016. John Kerry won the debates against a very bad debater, George W. Bush, and still lost to Bush in 2004.
Now, what your system perhaps doesn't do, it spits out who might win, but it won't tell us the margin, Professor. If it's a very closely fought debate, does that worry you in terms of what we saw last time when Donald Trump lost the election?
Debates don't worry me at all, as I explained. They are not predictions. My system is roughly correlated with margins of vote, but I don't report that. I tell you who's going to win and who's going to lose. Therefore, I put myself out on a limb every 4 years, and I have a lot of butterflies in my stomach having done this for 4 years, because my calls are falsifiable. Take, for example, the compilers of polls, like that clerk Nate Silver. He tells you in 2016, something like a 75 to 80% chance that Hillary Clinton would win. And then when she loses, he says, see, I told you there was more than a 20% chance that she would lose. So he can never be right and he can never be wrong. I am either right or wrong, and everybody knows it.
What are you like on election night? Are you the worst person to sit next to watch the results come in?
I am absolutely the worst person, although I have done a lot of television coverage, including for the BBC a couple of times in England. But I have to say, on election night 2016, I'm not a sardonic person, as you can see, but I took a little bit of sardonic pleasure in watching the pundits and the pollsters twist themselves into pretzels, trying to explain why something happened that they assured us could not possibly happen, Trump's win. I predicted Trump's win, which you can imagine did not make me very popular in 90% plus Democratic Washington, D.C., where I teach at American University. But my calls are predictions, not endorsements. They're totally nonpartisan. I predicted about as many Republican as Democratic wins. I called wins for the 2 most conservative Republicans of our time, Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump, as well as Barack Obama and now Kamala Harris.
Professor, thank you so much for giving us your time. I look forward to see whether your prediction has another record-breaking year. Professor Lichtman, thank you for giving us your time.
Take care. Can I say one more thing? Catch my live show for my analysis every Tuesday and Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern US at Allan Lichtman YouTube.
There you go. Allan Lichtman YouTube is where you can find the professor to look at his further analysis. Well, look,